This here is another viewer's broken gaming PC. And yes, I'm in my sleeping pants today because I work from home. You'll be okay. So just a bit of backstory. This system has actually been featured on the channel before in a Fix or Flop video. Yeah, it's back for round 2. I can't recall what episode of Fix or Flop it was, but it came here for, I believe, a no post issue. It would turn on, but you couldn't get a picture to display to the monitor. And the fix ended up being super easy, right? All we had to do was just reseat a DDR4 module. So once that DIMM was slotted correctly in, the system worked. And that was it. It was actually a pretty short video, and thankfully we didn't need to replace anything. So had I been charging these viewers, which I don't, but had I been, I probably wouldn't have even charged this person anything because it literally took 10 seconds to fix. This case, however, is a bit different. So again, exact same PC, but it doesn't power on at all, which could be really bad. Could be something very simple. But imagine this thing being plugged in, pushing the power button literally does nothing. So I'm as in the dark with this one as you guys are. I'm hoping we can hash it out fairly quick. I'm going to narrow my search in on these cables. Could be something, again, very simple, just with wiring. I'm also going to focus on the power supply specifically because I think that if it's not a simple wiring issue, it's probably a dead unit, which would be unfortunate. But we need to find all that out in this video. Stay with me. If you're tired of running multiple RGB software suites to sync up your PC build, check out Signal RGB, a free application that unifies control for multiple devices from multiple brands. Say you're running Corsair RAM and an EVGA graphics card. No problemo, control and sync both through Signal RGB. They even have game integrations for cool effects, performance monitors, and a community-driven Discord channel. Signal RGB's product support list is growing every single day, and you can download it for free by clicking the link below. Hey there, welcome to Fix or Flop. This is season 2. If you haven't heard of this playlist before, we have an entire first season that you've totally missed. I think 20 super interesting episodes. You might learn a thing or two as well. So give those a watch if you want to catch up to speed here, although each of these episodes is independent of one another, so you don't have to watch a previous episode to know what's going on here. Each episode consists of a totally new system, and in this case, the system, again, doesn't turn on at all. So we've got a pretty big issue potentially on our hands. This system needs to be a kind of sort of cable managed just a tad. This is the NZXT H1, the original. Now it does have the fully updated riser cable, so there aren't any potential fire hazards. Crossing my fingers. But other than that, I don't see too much wrong with this thing. We might clean it up just a tad for him before we give it back. But I'm really interested in trying to figure out what's wrong with this. We do have our PSU tester from Passmark we'll also use if it ends up being something a bit more complicated than just a simple wiring problem. I did kind of, again, glance over in the parking lot when I picked this up. His primary connections, 24-pin, 8-pin EPS. Again, usually if you have nothing coming from the power supply and you've plugged your primary cables incorrectly, right, to the wall, you flip the switch at the rear of the unit, it could come down to just simply not connecting a 24-pin all the way or not connecting an 8-pin EPS, etc. I checked those over just to be sure it wasn't something super simple, and I didn't see anything wrong, but then again, it is a bit hard to see all the way in here. Everything is super compact, so I can only see a bit. I don't know. I'm really thinking this is going to be a PSU issue. Probably will need to swap this thing out, so I don't know. Let's give it a shot. So with all that out of the way, you guys know the routine. Let's get to the troubleshooting process. First off, we need to attempt to replicate the issue described by the owner. In this case, it doesn't power on at all. No fans, no lights, nada. So if what the owner of the system says is true, we don't really even need to connect our monitor because it just refuses to turn on at all. I'm going to flip the switch to the on position at the rear of the power supply, and we're just gonna have at it. Ooh, it does turn on. I'm kind of weirded out by this. This is not what was described. Maybe I should get my monitor.
A few moments later.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it does turn on. Just don't get a picture out, and you said the power supply fan doesn't turn. Gotcha, okay. All right, whoops. So, that was my bad. I must have misunderstood him that, or I just got it confused with another Fix or Flop entry. We have literally dozens in the queue right now, and I'm trying to prioritize the most serious ones. So if you have like an issue where your system doesn't power on at all, or it powers up but you get no picture out, those are the ones I try to prioritize first, because those are unusable, right? The infrequent blue screens of death and whatnot, while they're also a pain to troubleshoot, so that's one of the reasons why I try to stay away from them. It also implies that your system does work at least partially. So the folks that can't use their systems at all, those are the ones that take precedence for me. So I'm gonna continue doing that moving forward. This one still obviously it's still in that boat where it doesn't send a picture out, but I'm still kind of sort of focusing my attention on this power supply. I still feel like there's a power supply issue. I don't see the graphics card fans spinning. I didn't see them spin even in the beginning when I first powered it up. The power supply fan itself in the unit is not spinning either. That could just be because it's not under load, but I didn't see it spin when I first powered the system up either. So I don't know. There's kind of mixed signals with this one. Unfortunately, there is no Dr. Debug. There are no debug LEDs, so we're kind of just shooting into the dark here. We're gonna have to see what sticks. First thing I wanna do is take this case apart a bit more so that we can see the wiring on the inside, double check, make sure there's nothing obvious that we can fix. You know, what's also interesting is that when I attempt to hold the power button down to turn the system off, like even in systems that have improperly seated DIMMs, this will still work. It will still turn itself off. Whether I hold it down or just press it very quickly, especially if you're in the BIOS, you just push the power button once very quickly and the system will immediately shut down. It's not shutting down at all. I've been holding this down since I started filming this clip. It still hasn't turned off. I don't know what's going on. The only way to kill power is to actually cut power at the power supply, which is just, I don't understand what's going on there. So let's see what we're working with here. Remove these two screws, and now this entire AIO assembly should fold downward. All right, and we get a much better view of our motherboard. Can check vital connections. 8-pin EPS looks good. 24-pin looks good. Maybe we can check the power supply side as well because this is a modular unit. All right, and all of these cables, well, they are a bit crushed, something I never really liked about the original H1. There's just not enough space here to route these very short cables. And yeah, they're all connected, and they are all running to the correct peripherals as well. So this doesn't look like a simple wiring issue. Not that I really am all that surprised because he hasn't touched this since the last time we worked on it. I've looked over literally everything else in here. All of his connections look fine. I checked the front I/O wiring as well because sometimes that could cause the system to behave oddly if like your power pins are plugged into your hard drive LED pins, etc. But all of that was wired fine. I double checked that he hasn't taken this apart since the last time we worked on it. So I have now disconnected everything non-vital. We have one stick of DDR4 still in here in the first slot. We have the 8-pin EPS connected up here on the top left. We have the 24-pin connected, and we have the graphics card connected, or PCIe power. That's it. Nothing else. I want to see if it'll post now, because maybe it had an issue to do with the peripheral. We'll turn power on. We'll also need to manually jump the power pins on this board. Okay. And there we go, the system is on. I know no fans are spinning. The pump isn't on either. The system won't be on for very long. I just want to see if we can get a post. Although I still kind of doubt it. Yeah, nothing so far. I have a really bad feeling now about this power supply. I'm starting to think that the clues are all pointing in this direction. We're gonna connect this to our passmark tester and see if everything checks out. So let's see what we've got. Power supply switches back on, and go ahead and turn the unit on. Let's see what we get here. Gotta hold it down, I forgot. There we go. All right, so power's on. 24-pin looks good. 12 volts to the CPU, 12 volt PCIe. Okay, so it doesn't look like our unit is defective. Well, that kind of sucks. One last try then, but this time with a different power supply. This is going to be the last attempt before I move on to another component. I still have my doubts about the power supply in here. I don't know why. I just feel like the symptoms we're seeing are reminiscent of a power supply issue. So let's give it a shot. We're going to jump the pins here. Okay, and system is on. I know it doesn't look like it, but it is. And we are looking for a post. I don't think we're gonna get one. Look, at this point, again, it's a shot in the dark because the one thing that I thought it was clearly is not the culprit. So I'm going to shift attention to the platform here. it's probably not the CPU. I say that and now I'm second guessing myself because this is an AMD platform. I'm just gonna throw this out there. I'm not saying this is a definitive thing, but in this playlist so far, we've run into, if I recall correctly, a few more dead AMD CPUs than I was really expecting. A lot of them are like Ryzen 5 3600s and 2600s. The 3600 though, for some reason, is just, that's the one that I think we've had like 2 or 3 of those die already. And I don't know why that's the case. Well, I mean, we'll need to check the CPU anyway when we swap boards. It's not RAM. We've tried both DIMMs. I've tried one of my own DIMMs. I did that off camera. I apologize. I feel like you guys don't want to see that same thing over and over in each one of these videos, but I did check that. The CMOS was cleared. I mean, we have to swap. I don't want to swap the platform because that's a pain in the butt, but it's the next logical thing to do, I think. I don't think this is a graphics card problem, but even if it was, it's not like we could just disconnect it and run off of integrated graphics because this is, again, a Ryzen CPU. Most of those don't have IGPs. I mean, we could swap the card. I guess it would be easier than swapping the motherboard. I wish I could actually talk to you guys live, maybe if we had a poll. I'd assume most of you would say swap the card first because it's easier, and I agree with that. I think I should practice what I preach. So we'll swap this out. This looks like an RX 580 or RX 480. We'll swap it out for our GT 710, see if we get any picture out. I also just realized that slot 1 is, for whatever reason, the outside slot, so I went ahead and just put my DIMM back in to make sure that we didn't get a post, and yeah, still nothing. So let's get this card out of here and slot in our measly GT 710. It's a trusty GT 710 because it has saved us more than once. It's a very quick check for a dead graphics card. Let's give it a shot now. Jumping power pins. All right, the system is on. Any picture? I'm kind of hoping it's not going to send us a picture out, because if it does, that implies that the card is likely dead. And, well, this thing, despite being a few generations old, this is an RX 570, by the way, not a 580, is still pretty expensive in today's graphics card market, so I'd like not to replace that. And it doesn't appear as though it's fixed the issue. You know, we could rule out the riser cable, because I know this was upgraded, and I don't think it would be bad, but we need to rule it out before we move on, because it is one extra variable at play here. You know what I just realized though? This motherboard has LEDs on it underneath, just to kind of give it like an underglow. I don't think it has debug LEDs. I haven't seen any of those yet. Maybe it's like, maybe there's some wedge between the 24 pin and the outer DIMM slot, but there are LEDs that kind of give it that underglow effect when it's in a case, and those aren't lighting up at all, and they definitely should be. This, I still want to double check the riser cable first, again, just to be on the safe side, but I'm really starting to think it's the motherboard now, which sucks. Let's see, what do we have here? Just in the CPU, it is a Ryzen 5, yep, Ryzen 5 3600X. I'm kind of not surprised, based on previous builds that we've had to fix, that this is the CPU in here. If the motherboard is fine, then it's probably a dead CPU, which, again, that's such a rare thing typically, but for some reason, these 3600s and 3600Xs, they just love to kick the can. So I've cleaned up the chip, and I don't see anything out of the ordinary. If you check the pins on the back here, all of them are where they should be. No bent pins, no missing pins, so physically, things check out. And in the socket, things also check out. Nothing clogged in any of the pinholes. It all looks pretty clean. Visual inspection of the motherboard also checks out. Looks to be in pretty good shape. No blown caps, no missing SMDs or anything like that. So, yeah, nothing obvious. Now, one last hurrah before we move on to replacing the motherboard. We've eliminated the riser cable variable by slotting the card directly into the board. We've eliminated a potential shorting to ground scenario where maybe the motherboard was touching part of the case where it shouldn't. I checked visually, it looked fine, but this will just keep us on the certainty side. Now, I don't have a cooler on the CPU. It's not good to run this long term without a cooler, of course, so don't do that. You'll kill your chip. We're just gonna be running it for a few seconds. I've got my thermal cam, and we're just gonna see if the CPU even heats up. Because if it doesn't, then yeah, I mean, that just would make a lot of sense. So let's see, where's the power pins? Okay. So the system is on. Okay, so the chip is heating up a tad. We're still not getting picture out. We're gonna go ahead and kill power. Yeah. Do I want to replace the CPU first or the motherboard? It's probably a bit easier to replace the CPU. Although I still think it's a motherboard. Just gonna swap them out just because it's a bit quicker. So I'm gonna replace his 3600X with mine because I know that mine works. And if we still don't get the post, obviously it's not the CPU, right? And the only remaining component is the motherboard. Yep, so motherboard's still heating up and we're not getting any picture. Oh, we did. Okay, I'm killing power. That chip is pretty hot. Again, don't do that. It's not good to leave these chips running without any cooler attached at all. I really shouldn't be showing you this on video. It's just, for a few seconds, it's fine. And we kept it on long enough to see that post. So a dead CPU. What was I saying earlier in this video? I mean, I was ultimately wrong about the assumption of what's bad, but I did say, did I not, that some of these 3600s and 3600Xs that we've run into in the past that just die. They literally just kick the can, which I have not been accustomed to with other older AMD CPUs and even older and current Intel CPUs. For whatever reason, we've had like 3 or 4 of these chips, these specific chips from AMD, this SKU specifically, die. What's up with that? I don't even want to give him a 3600X. I don't want to give him mine because I feel like mine's probably going to kick the can too at some point. What's going on? Dead CPU. Ah, jeez. That's because I still have a tiny bit of doubt. Now again, CPUs shouldn't really die like this, but we've run into a few. I'm going to attempt to connect this to another system that I know works with a different CPU in it. It's still a Ryzen-based platform, obviously. It needs to be, the BIOS is compatible with the 3600X. So yeah, let's swap it in there. Let's power it on. So this is that rig with the working CPU in it. I'm not even sure what CPU it is, but obviously it's a Ryzen CPU, so we should get some post. And once we confirm that it works, like so, then we'll turn it back off and we'll swap CPUs. That's literally the only thing we're going to do. Again, we know the BIOSes are compatible because, well, this is I think it's a B550 board. Pretty sure it is. I'm gonna triple check that. But I think the CPU in here is actually newer than the 3600X anyway. So that should be an easy swap. And if the system doesn't work, then that means this thing's bad because this is the only variable we've touched, right? Everything else is exactly the same. So this here is a 5600G. Okay, well, that makes sense. We have so many builds around here, I get them confused. I'm not sure which computers have which chips in them, so that's why I always have to kind of find out on my own. And we're gonna swap in the 3600X. This, by the way, yes, is a B550 motherboard, so we should have native Zen 2 support, regardless of the BIOS revision. Here we go. If this works, then I'm gonna be awfully confused. But it shouldn't, right? It shouldn't, because of what we just saw with the ITX platform. I think the chip is dead. Ooh. That didn't sound good. That was like the power supply tripping. It tripped like 4 times in a row. I should probably connect the fan, although I doubt that's what's causing this to not post. Wow. That was really weird. The power supply made that sound. But nothing. Nothing at all. We can try one DIMM in all 4 slots, in both channels. I don't think this is a memory channel issue from the CPU. And we found that to be an issue before with these chips as well. But yeah, we're not getting picture out. I suspect it's just all around dead. And there's nothing I can really do about it here in the studio, except replace the chip outright, which I suppose we can do. Again, I don't really want to give him another 3600X because if it is a SKU-dependent issue, what we've been running into recently, he's just going to run into this problem again. I'll see what I have. This is a B450 board. Yeah, so maybe I can give him like a 3700X. Now this chip here is from a previous video, and you can see I've labeled this one bad. It straight up does not work. And you know, this is also a Ryzen 5 3600 or 3600X, whatever, Ryzen 5 Zen 2 chip. It's, you know, I think it's just a coincidence. I don't think it's SKU dependent. That would be a huge stretch based on the very, very small sample size we have. But this is one of, what, 3 now that we've run into in this city alone, right? 3 bad Ryzen 5 CPUs all within a few months. I also just realized I don't have any Ryzen 7 3700Xs anymore. I think I gave my last one away. I do, however, of course, have the 3600X, a direct replacement. Again, I wasn't really trying to give him the exact same chip just because this might happen down the line again, but I know this, and I know this guy personally. He's actually a good friend of mine, so it won't be an issue if I need to swap it out again for him, I suppose. I do have a 3900 XT, but I think that's a bit overkill, especially for a compact case with only a 120mm AIO baked in. So we can set this build back aside. It has served its purpose, and we can focus on getting this viewer system back together, of course, with the new CPU installed. It's not a new chip, I should say. It's a used one, but it at least works, whereas his does not. Wow, it is like super finicky trying to get this motherboard in position. Holy guacamole, the frickin' tolerances here are super tight. I like the V2 of the H1 because it has a bit more space to work with. And with things cable managed a bit more, we can go ahead and fold this upright. Always a bit worried about pinching cables here, but I think we've cleaned things up cable-wise enough. Yeah, it closed pretty easy there. So a couple screws that are gonna lock this in place. And we can get his RX 570 reinstalled. Just slide right in, more or less. Alrighty, and we'll connect supplemental PCIe power. There's 8-pin here. Side panels going on. Oh, it's kind of weird getting these on the H1, but I like that it's toolless. Oops, I completely missed one of the rails. That's the only frustrating part about it, is trying to get it all lined up here. I think that'll do it. All right, nice. And let's give it a shot. This thing should fire right up. And all I'm looking for here is a post. That's it. I don't care about anything else. I just want this thing to actually send a picture out. It was all we were tasked with fixing. So let's hope this works. Yes. Okay. Good. That's it. I shouldn't be surprised because we did confirm that swapping chips worked, but yeah, we're good to go. So this system can be used again. This is actually, his name's Thomas, a good friend of mine, like I said, and he uses this for work. So it was important that I got this back to him as quickly as possible. Good to hear that it wasn't anything too severe in the sense that like we'd have to wait several days for a part to get here. If it was a dead graphics card, that would have sucked. But CPU, I can swap out pretty easily. And there are those motherboard lights I was talking about a bit earlier. They are on now, and well, we were kind of fooled by this symptom. I was initially thinking it was because of the motherboard that these weren't coming on, but it's actually because of the CPU. Who would have thought? Well, another day, another dead CPU. Who would have thought? And I started this playlist out a while ago, stating that most of the time, the CPU is not to blame. It seems like this is just as common as every other symptom we've run into in this playlist. And again, I have no idea what I'm getting myself into most of the time when these systems come in. If they don't power on or they don't post, I mean, it could be a number of things. And in this case here, we had no Dr. Debug LED. We had no debug LED indicator at all of any sort on this board. So we're kind of just shooting in the dark, hoping to, find something that sticks. I started with the power supply, then switched over to the graphics card, still got it wrong. Then we swapped the CPU, and I swapped the CPU before I swapped the motherboard just because it was easier to do. It took a few seconds versus a few minutes, and look at there, dead chip. And we verified it, right, in a different platform. I don't know. It's strange that I now have 3 instances where something has gone pretty wrong with a Ryzen 5 Zen 2 CPU. In this playlist, just this playlist. 3 broken Zen 2 chips. I don't know. I obviously think it is way too premature to jump on the, AMD produced a bad batch of Zen 2 chips bandwagon. I think that our sample size is far, far too small to make any claims like that. However, I think if I can get a hold of one more of these, because I have 2 now, right? 2 totally bad ones. The other one that I had that had a dead memory channel, I think is still in there. But we have 2 that straight up will not post at all. And if I can get a hold of one more like this, I might reach out to AMD. I do have contacts there. I'll see if I can get them to look at these, and maybe they can shed some light into what exactly is going wrong with this particular SKU, like the 3600, 3600X. Why are these the ones that seem to be breaking more than any other? I've never even run into a dead 3700X, 3800X, 3900X, it's only these. And it might just be because these are way more common, right? These are way better value, I think. 6 cores, 12 threads, $200 thereabouts. So it's a really good value proposition, and maybe that's just why, because there's more of these in circulation, the chance of running into a defective one of these is higher. But I don't know. I mean, for there to be 3 of these now, I'm just pointing it out. That's all I'm doing here. And I don't really know what else to say. I obviously don't want to jump to any conclusions. It's just way too early in the game. With that, if you enjoyed watching this video, be sure to let me know by giving this one a thumbs up. That would be greatly appreciated. Consider subscribing if you have not already. And like I said, leave a comment down below letting me know what you'd like to see next and what you think about this video and our findings. My name is Greg. Thanks for fixing another PC with me.